we're recording. Welcome for those of you online and for those of you here in person. Today is October 14th, 2020. And we are here at Boston University. For those of you watching far into the future, the middle of the pandemic, which is why I'm wearing a mask. I'm actually wearing the wrong mask. I'll switch in a few moments. I'm wearing the extra thick mask, which makes it hard to hear. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, and what we're going to do today is I'm just going to talk real briefly about sort of the short-term future. And then after we do with the administrative things, we're going to do multiple regression. Woo! My favorite. And actually it is. It's one of the top 3 in this class. Because multiple regression is where we actually start doing real things. Simple regression, one variable. In the real world, you almost never run simple regressions. I mean, I occasionally run them, but what do I spend most of my time doing, and what do people pay me to do? They pay me to do multiple regressions. So it's like riding a bicycle. Simple regressions, you're riding around with training wheels. Do people ride around with training wheels? Yes. But when you're riding a bicycle, they take off the training wheels and they just basically pedal away. So we're going to take off the training wheels. We're going to do real things today. Administratively, today we're going to do multiple regressions. On Friday, we're going to have a midterm review. Friday night, your problem set 3 is due, 6 o'clock. Tuesday, for most of you, is the exam. And for some of you who are watching this from like China, you've asked for an alternative exam. The alternative exam is going to be given Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock. You need to be on the list. So if you're not on the alternative list, you need to send me an email to get on the alternative list, because the computer basically knows your name and when you're taking the exam. So if you're here, if you're physically in front of me, you're taking it Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, I assume. But there is an alternative Wednesday morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Boston time. And hopefully Monday, hopefully this is my fervent desire, is that on Monday we'll have a little lecture where I'll go over how to do a project. So we'll start talking about project part B, and that name of that lecture is how to tell a story. Because I've already skimmed through some of the projects, and the Excel parts look pretty good. The quantitative parts look pretty good. The storytelling parts look like you need a little bit of work. Why is story important? Because if you get up in a conference room and all the bosses and the bosses there, and you mumble around for an hour just spewing out facts and figures, at the end of the hour, they're like, yeah, that's nice. And no one remembers a single thing. And you've just done 3 months, 6 months, 9 months worth of work. But if you walk into that conference room and you tell a story and the bosses walk out and go, wow, she was amazing. He told a great story. I remember this. I need to promote somebody. That's my person. The difference between a high achiever with quantitative methods and a regular person is most everybody knows how to click around in Excel. It's not that hard. But the ones who can tell memorable stories with numbers so that people know what they should do and why, those are the ones that get promoted. And my goal is to make sure all of you have the big bucks so that we rename Questrom your name. Probably not in my lifetime, but a little bit later, okay? All right, so what time is the exam again? Tough question asked with Ashley. I don't know, does anyone remember? It's on the syllabus. I think it might be 7 o'clock? Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'll be honest, Ashley, there's 4 professors teaching QM222. I'm responsible for the morning section. I'm responsible for the Wednesday alternative, and they're responsible for the Tuesday night, so I don't know what time the exam is.
How long is it?
You're given 2 hours. Okay. And the exam, we haven't nailed down the format, but it's either, it looks just like a problem set. So you'll do the same thing. You'll go to all sections website. You'll take tests and quizzes, and instead of PS2, problem set 2, and PS3, there'll be midterm exam. So it looks identical to that. Even some of the questions look kind of similar to the problem sets on purpose. Because I'll be honest with some of you, I've looked through some of the problem sets, and some of you, it's clear, are sort of copying each other. sort of a lot of common answers, even with some of the same common mistakes. And okay, problem sets don't count for very much of your grade, but in a midterm, when everybody's under the gun and you only have 2 hours to do it, the question is, can you do your own work? And that's really when what we see is a whole bunch of people who get perfect scores on their problem sets, 100 across the board, and then they end up with a 60 or a 50 on the midterm. And it's like, guess who's cheating, right? So cheating on problem sets, okay, I don't like it, but in general, it's pretty easy to figure out who's cheating. And then the repercussions are you get low grades on the midterm and final exam. So any other questions about the midterm? We are going to talk about it on Friday. The whole class session. What chapters are on the exam? I don't know, but what I do know is that I wrote a document that says, it's up under resources here. Let me show you the class website. Share screen. There's the class website. Resources. And under resources, there is key dates and readings. So it's this file here, key dates and readings, and the chapter readings that are associated with this are on there. And I will say after we do multiple regression today, we are exactly on schedule. So as soon as I stop talking about the announcements, we are like exactly where I said we were supposed to be in the class. Any other chats I'm missing? Ritvik, did I miss anything? It seemed like 9 chats went by and I only saw 2.
I think you're good.
All right, thanks. If not, shout it out. So since we're here on resources, let me pick data files, and under data files, we're going to go back to our old friend Brookline condominium data. And let me save, and let me open that. I've opened Brookline condo data, and then I need to go up and open up the PowerPoint file. And I think this is lecture, I don't know, 12 or 13, one of those two. It says multiple regression. There it is, lecture 13, multiple regression. I cannot open Brookline condo data. It's not good. Let's try it again. Okay, it just opened Brookline condo data. That's good. Better. And under resources, I need multiple regressions, which is lecture 13. I was going through my notes last semester, and multiple regressions was the lecture when the pandemic hit. So everything was going great during the semester, and then my multiple regression lecture, I actually had a second version of this talk. So, okay, we're now in lockdown mode. We're all trying to do Zoom. What's going on? So it's kind of an interesting lecture for me, remembering. Do you remember where you were when they said BU's canceled? Everyone's going to lockdown? Yeah. So this is it for last semester for QM222. So what we're going to talk about is multiple regression, and hopefully if we have time, we're going to talk about Moneyball. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the movie Moneyball. It's a movie about a man named Billy Beane. Billy Beane was or is the manager of the Oakland Athletics baseball team. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal said that Billy Beane is leaving baseball. He's moving to soccer. It was a front page article. So you have to be pretty famous to get a front page article when you move jobs from one sector to another on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And the idea of Moneyball, just in case we don't have time, is that Billy Beane took a QM222 approach to baseball. Up until Billy Beane, people relied on scouts, and scouts said, yeah, that boy, he has character. And they said, okay, he has character. We want characters on our team. So they hired people like that, pitchers and batters, or he's got speed. And what Billy Beane said is, we don't really care about your gut feelings about particular players. Instead, we can quantitatively put together a team and a winning team. And he basically hired a whole bunch of statisticians, and those statisticians came up with a number of key measures. And those key measures enabled Billy Beane to put together a baseball team that was one of the cheapest, i.e. lowest payroll in baseball, but with the highest winning percentage. And he went very, very far. I think they made it to the World Series, but didn't win that year. So it was pretty amazing. Anyways, since that time, pretty much every single organization in sports has adopted a much more quantitative approach, including college athletics. I had a number of people from the BU rowing team, the people up in the Charles Rivers, and one of the students last semester or last year looked at me and said, yeah, coach, my coach is just like Billy Beane. I mean, he has metrics every single day when he goes out there, number of strokes, how hard he's working, all this kind of information, because we've now adopted a very quantitative approach to trying winning in sports. Instead of do you have character? My gut tells me this is a good pick. Anyways, we'll come back to that in hopefully a few moments. I'm sorry, Rivik, can you see this, what's on the screen, or am I just talking?
Yes.
See the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Is it the simple regression?
Simple regression. Perfect. Great. So simple regression, what we did is y equals mx plus b. I don't remember how many of you were tortured by an algebra teacher a number of years ago. Any of you tortured by an algebra teacher to learn y equals? So what we basically did is y was the left-hand side variable. Let's see if I can get a cursor over here. Y was a left-hand side variable. Mx, well, there's the x right there, and m we just call b1 on this particular slide. It's just some coefficient, some slope coefficient. Could be a positive, lines going up, negative, lines going down. Could be relatively flat. And y equals mx plus b. b0 is the y-intercept. And we, for the last couple of times, have looked at just very simple regressions. For example, we looked at wealth for the y variable and number of children yesterday. We also looked for the y variable at income, looked at the number of children. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at on Beacon Street a dummy variable for the x and the price of a condo for the y variable. The problem in life is that life is not simple. Life is a little more complex than just one single factor. So you're saying, oh, how do I get a good grade on my QM222 midterm? It's not just based on one factor like how smart you are. Instead, it's based on lots of factors, such as how much time you put in studying, the quality of your studying. What do I mean by quality? There have been certain people in my family who believe that they said, oh, I studied for an exam. How many hours did you study for the exam? I studied 3 hours for the exam. And I said, really? How many movies did you watch? They said, oh, I got through 2 movies at the same time I was studying. And I always smile as a college professor and look at my children and say, how the heck can you watch 2 movies, okay, at the same time you think you're studying? Well, it distracts me. Yes, it distracts you. That means it's not quality study time. So it's quality of time. How much of you're absorbing information, all right? Not, are you just sort of putting in your 2 hours and saying, yeah, I studied for 2 hours. I don't know if that makes any sense. So hours spent studying, quality of time spent studying. Other factors, anybody? Go ahead on Zoom. Other factors that increase or decrease your midterm score. We have Kenzie here in the front row. Wait. Say again?
Can I say
Yeah?
sleep?
Sleep. How much sleep you get, right? More sleep, better. Okay? Anybody online?
Office hours, if you go.
Office hours if you go. Okay.
The amount of,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the amount of commitments you have that week, like if you have a lot of activities going on that week versus if you don't.
All right, number of activities, number of other things you're trying to deal with. One more person online. I have 2 people in class.
Previous exam scores.
Just one at a time, sorry. But we'll do 2 online, both of you. So the lady first, and then the gentleman, whoever spoke.
Okay, I was saying the environment you take the exam in, like if you are, like since we are doing online, maybe you are in a noisy place while taking the exam versus a quiet place.
Okay, so the type of environment, your call, you're taking it online. And the gentleman who is speaking?
I said previous scores.
Previous score. All right, so did you have previous QM222 experience or any other previous quantitative work. Isabel, and then I'm sorry, what's your name for that? Jeff? Kevin. All right, sorry, Kevin, not even close to Jeff. So Isabel first, and then Kevin next, or Jeff. Either one.
The amount of research you incorporate to settings such as like
Amount of resources, Isabel said, for those of you who can't hear.
textbooks and watching the media gallery.
Oh, so watching the media gallery, going back and reviewing these things. Quick note, you can watch on media gallery like 1.5, 2 times speed. So you can basically go through the videos relatively quickly. Kevin or Jeff, as I like to call you.
I think someone else already said commitments, but you could say like other midterms specifically. Like,
Oh, so other midterms. Is the accounting people, having you worried? Is it, some of the other classes you have to deal with? All right, excellent job on all of you. So the idea of multiple regression, hopefully you can see my cursor here, is we have the same kind of output variable, the same y, but instead of just having one variable, we have 1x1, 2x1, 3x1, all the way up to kx1. And basically, k can be as big as you want. You can have hundreds, you can have even thousands of explanatory variables. The problem is if you have thousands of explanatory variables, you need millions of data points, or at least hundreds of thousands, all right? It's very simple. How many of you have ever seen pictures of places in like Tahiti, these famous resorts where they have little bungalows over the water? Does that make sense? These little huts over the water, and you're sitting on your front deck, you just dive in the water, it's perfect, it looks beautiful. It's like, oh, I want to get out of here, I want to go to Tahiti. So those huts are built on stilts over the water. How many stilts do you need to hold a hut up? If it's just you don't need very many stilts. So imagine you and people are the x variables, all right? How many observations do you need? If there's one person in the hut, 4 or 5 stilts might be fine. One in each corner, one in the center. But if you have 10 people in your hut all partying, you can't have just 5 stilts. The hut will collapse and everyone falls in the water. If you have thousands of people in your hut, 5 stilts are definitely not going to handle it. You need maybe double or triple. If you have 1,000 people in the hut, maybe you need 5,000 stilts because it's a pretty big area. So as the number of variables goes up, you need more support. And the support is the number of observations. You only have a small number of observations, only a small number of x variables. You have a lot of observations, you have the potential, not the requirement, but the potential for lots of x variables. The model I've ever done, the biggest, I think I've had about 175 variables. That was the biggest I've ever done in my life. So there's 2 reasons why we want to do multiple regression. The first is to get closer to the unbiased coefficient. What do we mean by unbiased? When we go back to simple regression, we had on Beacon Street. On Beacon Street was trying to take care of a lot of different things. We had a group discussion about things on Beacon Street. It was closer to shops and stores. It was closer to the T, but it was also noisy. The apartments were a little smaller. So all these different factors. In the simple regression, we just had one x variable on Beacon Street, but we talked about all these other factors associated with on Beacon Street. So we get to unpack on Beacon Street by having lots of different factors associated with it. So that gets us closer to the right value. And also it increases the predictive power of the regression. What do we mean by predictive power? In a few minutes, we're going to make a prediction for what the price of a condo will be on Beacon. In a few minutes, we'll make a prediction for the price of a Brookline condo, whether or not it's on Beacon Street and whether or not it has a number of other factors, like how many bedrooms it has, how many bathrooms it has. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at Brookline condo data again, and we're basically going to create a competing model to Zillow. The difference is that Zillow has about 100 different factors in the model, and our model at the end of today, we'll have far fewer than 100 factors. So we're going to estimate the value of living on Beacon Street, having an extra bathroom, having an extra bedroom. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to recreate what we did about a week and a half ago. And we're going to create a dummy variable on Beacon Street or not. And then we're going to run the regression, and hopefully we come up with the exact same numbers we did last week, which is about $500,000 for not on Beacon Street and a loss of $47,000 for being on Beacon Street. So I'm going to be quiet right now. Your job is to create in the Excel file a dummy variable on Beacon Street and then rerun the regression we did a week and a half ago. Price is the Y variable. The X variable is the single dummy on Beacon Street. Any questions? All right, sorry for interrupting you. For those of you who think you're doing great, just keep on going. For those of you who are interested in my answers, here's what I'm doing. I'm creating a dummy variable in column M called on Beacon. So I'm going to type equal if, left parenthesis, and what I'm looking for is cell C2 equal to double quote BEACON space ST close quote. So it doesn't match the string Beacon Street. If it does, put out a 1, comma, otherwise put out a 0. I got a 0 for the first one. Now I double click in the bottom right corner. Try that again. I double click in the bottom right corner, and I get a 1 on line 11. I get a 1 on line 16. All the rest are zeros, what I see. Looks good so far. The next thing I do is I pick data analysis. I want to run regression. I want to pick OK. And for the Y range, I'm going to pick sales price A1 down to A1086. And for the X range, just my simple variable M1 on Beacon down to M1086. I have labels. Click OK. And what I got was the $500,000 value minus the $47,000 value for being on Beacon Street. Any questions, problems? So doing multiple regressions is pretty straightforward. There is one simple trick in Excel, and the simple trick in Excel is all the X variables have to be together. So if we follow along on the PowerPoint slides, and I'm not going to jump to the PowerPoint slides, the other variable it's supposed to add now is not only on Beacon Street, but also size. The problem is that size is in column D, and on Beacon is column M, and there's no way in Excel to say use column D and column M. Instead, we have to move things. So we can either move size or Beacon Street. I'm going to move size. So I'm just going to highlight the whole column. I'm going to hit copy, Control C or Command C, depending whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And then I'm going to paste. So I have size now twice. You can move the column. You don't have to have size twice. You can have size once. You can rearrange the spreadsheet, whatever makes you happy. There's no right way of doing it. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to run the exact same regression, except now I want two factors. One is on Beacon Street, and the other takes into account size. What are we doing here? When we did a simple regression, we're estimating a line. Downward sloping, upward sloping, no slope at all. When we put in two variables, two X variables, we're estimating a plane. A plane, think of a sheet of paper. When we do three variables, we're estimating a cube where the cube doesn't necessarily have to have parallel sides or square sides. It's just sort of a three-dimensional shape where each face of the cube has to be a plane. But it doesn't have to be a square plane. It can be a squish. It can be kind of, I don't know, does that make sense? But it's not necessarily a square cube that's perfect. It's not like a Rubik's Cube. It can be like tilted any which way. If we estimate a 4 dimensions, 4 X variables, we're into time. And if we're into 5, we're into a kind of hyperspace. And hyperspace is sort of like Star Wars, you know, where the screen goes weird and all they show the kind of blurry stars. So I have no idea what it looks like in 5-dimensional or 6-dimensional space. But that's sort of the idea. 1 dimension, 1 X variable, we're estimating a line. 2 dimensions, a plane. 3 dimensions, kind of a cube. 4 dimensions, we're adding time to the cube. We're moving the cube along in time. And then 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions. I do not have the words or the vocabulary to describe it. I'm sorry. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to pick data analysis, regression, pick OK. And this time for the X range, instead of M column, I want M and N. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor in M1. I'm going to go over to N, and then I'm going to hold Control or Command down arrow, Enter, and I'll pause here. You should see for the X range, $M, $1, colon, N, $1, 1086. So M1 colon N 1086. It's a little hard to make out the M's and the N's, so look carefully at your computer. Because this is the #1 place where students go, what? I didn't get the same results as you did. And it's either because you're using N to N or M to M, but not M to N. That's even confusing just saying it.
Yeah, can you explain that again?
So the whole idea is in this little box right here, the X range, you have the M column and the N column, M and N. So it's M1 through N, 1086. All right. So we pick OK. And what happens is you should not get an error. If you've got an error, you probably picked something wrong. But what I got is these coefficients. Let me highlight them. make them money, get rid of the pennies, and I'll make them yellow. How do we interpret the intercept? The rhetorical question. The intercept is when all the x variables are 0. The intercept is when all the x variables are 0. In this case, on Beacon Street is 0, so this is a place not on Beacon Street, it's off Beacon Street, and size is 0. What does that mean in simple words? It's a plot of land that's not on Beacon Street. It's a plot of land off Beacon Street. It's like, I don't know, half mile away, mile away. So, land value for typical condo off Beacon is about $7,000. Now, for those of you who know anything about the Boston real estate market, if you want to buy a small plot of land in Brookline, you do not pay $7,000. You pay like $500,000 or $1 million. How could this be? Because have you ever been by some of these really tall apartment buildings? How big a plot of land are these tall apartment buildings on? Not very small. So what you do is you take this plot of land, which might be worth, say, $1 million, you divide it up by 60 units. So yeah, it's $1 million, but there's 60 or 75 units in the building, so each one only has a small part of that $1 million purchase price of the land. It's not the entire piece of land, it's the land associated with that condo, with that apartment. Does that make sense? Great. On Beacon Street, let's make this just a little bit bigger. On Beacon Street suddenly flipped. What was the sign a few moments ago? The sign a few minutes ago was minus. Let me just jump back to the sheet. It was minus $47,000. By adding in size, it's now plus $32,000. And that number is statistically significant. The t-stat is 2.5. And if we format the upper and lower 95%, and lower 95%, we're pretty sure it's not 0. It could be as low as a premium of $7,500, or it could be as high as a premium of $58,000. But what this says is people pay more for apartments on Beacon Street. People pay more for convenience. For those of you who are going to be budding real estate developers, what does this say? People who want to buy places want to be able to go shopping. They want to have stores. So if you're going to build a real estate tower, make sure you put shops and stores on like the first or second floor. People will pay more for those amenities. So let's type this in. People pay about $33,000. K stands for 1,000 to live on Beacon Street, not far away from it. Size 409. We'll call it 400. We'll just round. What the heck does 400 mean? Anybody online have an idea? What does 400 tell us? Rashad, go for it.
Professor, does it mean for every square foot, the sale price increases by $400?
Perfect. You pat yourself on the shoulder since I cannot. Okay? Great job. It says price per square foot in Brookline is about $400. Could be as low as $395 or as high as $424. But best guess, is about $400. What happened? When we did the simple regression, what we found out is that places on Beacon Street had a negative value. When we did the multiple regression, we suddenly found out that places on Beacon Street have a positive value. Why the switch? To answer that question, what I'd like you to do is create a pivot table. And the pivot table has on the rows on Beacon Street, and in the values, average size. Average size. Does that make sense? Pivot table, average size on or off Beacon Street.
Professor, I just have a quick question about how you interpreted the coefficient on the last spreadsheet. Can you just go back to that, please?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Could you say that again a little, I don't know, slower?
Yeah, so I had a question about how you interpreted the Beacon Street coefficient. So could you go back to that spreadsheet so I can ask the question?
This is spreadsheet one?
Yes, yes.
Great.
So for the interpretation of on Beacon Street, we use a dummy variable 0 to 1 for like if it's on or off. So
Yes.
wouldn't the interpretation be if people live on Beacon Street, they pay on average $33,000 more than not on Beacon Street? Or is it what you said where it's just the average is $33,000 on Beacon Street?
Oh, no. What you said first is correct. It's on average. Condos on Beacon Street are about $33,000 more expensive.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But no, what you said first was perfect. Forgive me for a slip of the tongue. Isabel, did you have a question?
What did you say, size? Which,
So you want to do a pivot table and figure out average size of condos. And average size of condos, if you want to split up into two parts, on Beacon Street condos and off Beacon Street condos. So just use the dummy variable for the rows. It's also okay to use dummy variable for the columns. You don't have to do it horizontally. You can do it vertically. Doesn't make a difference. In Excel, there's many ways of doing it.
Jay-Z Serenity has a question.
Go for it. Sorry, Serenity, I'm not paying attention.
Hi. I was wondering, since for the intercept, your T-stat is below that absolute value of 2, would you say that the information that you're getting is not statistically significant, or does it not matter?
Excellent question, Serenity. So you're already about 3 minutes ahead, okay? And on the 3 minutes ahead, there is a chance that land is basically free of Brookline for these giant condominiums. That there's almost no real value for the land. I don't personally believe it, but right now that's what the T statistic says.
Okay, thank you so much.
Lay, go ahead. You have your hand up too.
Yeah, I just had a question about when you're interpreting the coefficients, you wrote how people pay $33K more to live on Beacon Street, but how does the size coefficient impact that? Because I'm assuming with multiple regression, why would you run a multiple regression and just having on Beacon Street and on size, one on size?
So the whole idea of doing this pivot table is what we're going to see is that condos on Beacon Street versus off Beacon Street have very different sizes. And because they have different sizes, we want to take into account both factors at the same time. We want to take into account size at the same time we're taking into account whether they're on Beacon Street or not. And if you're multiple regressions, I'll jump ahead and I'll come back to the pivot tables. Let me show you, hopefully this answers your question, because this was the next slide I wanted to show. So there's our answer. How do we interpret the coefficients? We can interpret the coefficients as keeping all the other explanatory variables constant. What does this mean? I can take into account multiple factors and then just isolate the impact of one factor by holding everything else constant. A lot of students go, what the heck did he just say? You're thinking about your score, okay, on the QM222 midterm or any other midterm. And you want to vary something. So you're keeping the amount of sleep you're getting constant. You keep, let's say you're getting 8 hours of sleep constant. You're keeping the number of activities, like Kevin was saying, constant. And then we just change one factor, like how much coffee you drink before the exam. So doing multiple regression gives us the ability to hold all these factors constant and then just change one variable, like more caffeine or less caffeine, or more exercise or less exercise, or a little more stress or less stress. By adding one factor, we can adjust. It was Lay. Lay, did that answer your question or not?
Oh yeah, it did. Thank you so much.
Okay. So let's go back to the pivot table. Pivot table is somewhere. Here it is. And here's what I get for the pivot table. I think insert pivot table. Okay. I'm going to grab on Beacon Street and drag it to the rows. I'm going to take size, drag it to the values, and then flip size using the value field settings to average. And then I'm going to format this number so I can read it. And what do we see? Off Beacon. On Beacon. Places off Beacon are about 1,300 square feet. Places on Beacon are a touch over 1,000 square feet. Basically, there's a 200 square foot difference. 200 square feet means about 20%. Places off Beacon are 20% bigger. So in real estate, what do people pay for? They pay for two things. Number one, location, location, location. And then the second thing they pay for is space, size. The bigger the place, the more you pay. So when we were looking at the simple regression, let me show you the simple regression. When we're looking at this simple regression here, we were not taking into account that places on Beacon Street are 20% smaller. 20% is big in real estate, especially when we're talking about size. 20% smaller, we're taking into account, and because places on Beacon Street were smaller, they have a lower price, a lower coefficient. When we take into account size, when we take into account that Beacon Street places are smaller, we suddenly go, aha, there is a premium after adjusting. So what does this say? This regression says, the 32,936 says, holding size constant, a place on Beacon Street is worth more. Holding location constant, a bigger place is worth more. Coefficients aren't always positive, it's not always more, sometimes they're negative. I can't tell you whether it's going to be positive or negative, but in this case, we can run these experiments by holding size constant or holding location constant. So I have 4 minutes left, and what we'd like to do now is a prediction. Let me say that what I'm going to do for the next 3 or 4 minutes is going to go by very fast. You are not NOT required to make a multiple regression prediction on the midterm. We will come back and do this over and over again between now and the final. So the next 3 minutes is for the final exam, okay? But I promised you I would show prediction. How do we make predictions? Relatively simple. Insert a blank column and call that column input. For the inputs, always give a 1 next to the intercept. Always give a 1 next to the intercept. on Beacon Street. Help me out here. I forgot your name. Jacob. Jacob, is it on Beacon Street or off Beacon Street? I don't care. Your call. On Beacon Street. So we're going to put a 1 for on Beacon Street. Jacob, just pick that. And Jacob, size. Give me a size somewhere around 1,000. 800 square feet. So we have 1 for the intercept. We have 1 for on Beacon. And we have 800 square feet. What is our prediction? Type the word prediction. Prediction. And I'm going to introduce a new Excel function. A new Excel function is called sum product equal SUMPROD, sum product. And we need to give it 2 columns. 2 columns of information. The first column is the input. The input column is A17 through A19. A17 colon A19, comma. The second column is the coefficients. Coefficients are in C17. C17 colon C19. Hit enter. Format it as a number. And Jacob's condo, which is on Beacon Street and is 800 square feet, should be $367,000. That is our Zillow price for this data set. What did we just do? We came up with some input values. And those input values were decided by Jacob, decided by you, typed in. Whatever they come from, who knows where. The regression came up with these coefficients. And what we did is we did a sum product. What's sum product? Sum product means it multiplies each input by its coefficient and then adds it to the total. Why did we put 1 next to the intercept? Because we didn't put 1 next to the intercept. The intercept would be multiplied by nothing, and nothing times the intercept is 0. So we would not include the intercept. But this gives us the ability where Jacob goes, no, I'm looking at 2 places. One's 800 square feet on Beacon, the other is 1,200 square feet on Beacon Street. I just typed 1,200 in and look at that. Jacob's worth $531,000 and $223. All right? It gives you a fast way of coming up with predictions. Wow. Multiple regressions. Really cool. We as humans are bad at making predictions. This morning I said, oh, I can sleep an extra 10 minutes. That was a bad prediction, okay? I did not. I had to run all the way here. Got all sweaty. We are bad at making predictions, but regressions can help you make better predictions because it formalizes your choices. It's exactly, oh, I have 30 seconds left. So in my last 30 seconds, please stay healthy. You are not required to do multiple regression predictions on the midterm. You will be required to do single or simple regression predictions. Is that clear? And I look forward to seeing all of you on Friday. Have a great, healthy day, or 24 hours, 48 hours. Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What day of the week is it? I have no idea.
Professor, sorry. I have a quick question.